So, funny story. A couple days ago, I was going through my YouTube channel list, the ones I'm subscribed to, just trying to get rid of the ones that I don't watch anymore, and I saw Moongamer TT. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. I set that up back in 2017, about a year and a half ago, and it was my tabletop version of the channel, of my video game channel, which is just plain Moongamer. I've been recording and streaming video games for a few years now, and I'm also big into card games and board games, so I thought, let me try making a tabletop video. Let's see how that goes. So that's what Moongamer TT was, just a total experiment, and those first two videos that are up, those were my experiments using Warhammer Invasion, which was the game I was playing at the time. So I made part one, and I added all the graphics and the sound effects and music and all that. And then I thought that I uploaded that, and I thought, well, let me try number two to see if it goes any quicker, because now I've got the template and everything laid out in my software. So I tried it, and it did go quicker, but at that point I got distracted or something, and I never got back to part three. So I hate to say it, but this is the official announcement that there is no part three and will never be a part three. So that battle between the Empire and the Orcs, somewhere in an alternate universe, that battle will rage on forever. But back in this universe, I just wanted to give a channel update, since obviously people have watched and people have asked for that third episode. So I guess this is going to be part three of that series to kind of close it out. Well, first of all, I'll talk about Warhammer Invasion, the game itself. I thought, well, let me show people what came out for the game, because it's discontinued now. It came out, the core base game came out in 2009, and this was the box for that, Warhammer Invasion. This was back when Fantasy Flight and Games Workshop were still working together. They're separate now. But this was one of their early living card games. So instead of having booster packs like Magic, where everything's random and you have to buy a whole box to try to get, most of the set that comes out, they went with this living card game, which is a set pack that they release every month. So this was one of the first ones they did. So in addition to these card packs, and those were called battle packs, they also had what they called deluxe expansions. So they had 5 of those. The game, like I said, it came out in 2009, but it was discontinued. It wrapped up in 2013. So from 2010 to 2013, that's when you had 5 expansions and a total of 36 battle packs. So the only deluxe expansion that I have right now was Legends, and this was the third one that came out. So the deluxe editions, they were in these bigger boxes, smaller than the core, but you'll see what the battle packs look like here shortly. So in those deluxe expansions, the first one included 2 new factions that you could play. So the core game, you've got the Empire, the Dwarves, the Orcs, and Chaos that you can play. And they're represented by those city tiles, big cards, and they each have their own icons and colors. It's pretty cool. But anyway, the first expansion, deluxe expansion, released Dark Elves and High Elves. So that was cool. I want to get that someday. Second deluxe expansion came out and it introduced new keywords. Then this one came out, Legends, and that introduced a new card type, the Legend card type. And you can see mine's not even open. It's still shrink wrapped. The next expansion, the fourth one, came out, and it expanded the game to be a 4-player game. Because until then, it was a 2-player. You take this faction, I take this faction, and we butt heads, see who wins. But the last one, the 5th and final one, which came out in 2013, I really want this one because it came out with 4 new factions. You could play the Lizardmen, Wood Elves, the Skaven, and the Undead. So in the end, there were a total of 10 factions you could play if you had all the deluxe expansions. So then, in between all the deluxe releases, they had a monthly release called a Battle Pack, and this is what those looked like. Just a little deck of cards, and I'll show you what was inside each one. Okay, so you got alright, so first of all, let's look at the little advertisement, little catalog. So this is just a little poster for Warhammer Invasion, kind of cool. And then these were the first 3 battle packs that came out. The Skaven Blight Threat, which I do not have. I don't have the very first one. Path of the Zealot and Tooth and Claw. I'm just talking about Game of Thrones, which I've got that too, that living card game. Anyway, so what they did was they released, after they would release 6 of these battle packs, that would be considered a cycle. So there were 6 battle packs to a cycle, and they ended up releasing 6 cycles. So a total of 36 battle packs. I have 34 of them. So I am missing one from the first cycle and one from the second cycle. Now I've found them online. I'll see them occasionally, but they cost way more than what I want to spend to complete my collection. Someday I'll do that. But each one comes with additional cards. Like these are at the top here. These are all units. Got more dwarves, empire, chaos, orcs. But then you get down here and you can see that this came out. I thought there were some other. Yeah, this came out after the deluxe edition that gave the dark elves and high elves. So you've got some extra factions in here. That without that expansion, these are kind of useless. But anyway, then they give you some new neutral cards and another quest card. So that's what it was. And every pack was the same, so you didn't have to worry about random cards being in there. You have to buy more than one. You just buy one, you've got it all for that month. So, like I said, the first cycle, which was called the Corruption Cycle, I've got 5 of the 6. So I'll put that there. Then the second cycle that came out was called the Enemy Cycle. And again, I've only got 5, so I hope to get the 6th one someday. The third cycle that came out was the Morsleeb. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but there's that. So each one of these cycles represents 6 months of releases. Then you've got the Capital Cycle. The artwork is pretty cool on all these things. Then got the Blood Quest Cycle. Oh boy. There's those 6. Let's put that there. And finally, the last one, the Eternal War, which could also be the Empire versus Orc battle that I had going on in parts 1 and 2. So that's these 6. So those were the battle packs, and this was all the products released for Warhammer Invasion. Now they also had this was for Warhammer Fantasy. If you were into the 40K, they also had the 40K version called Conquest. They didn't have quite as many battle packs for that game, and I've got a lot of that too. And of course it had deluxe expansions also. But that is everything I've got for Invasion. What's funny, I've only played this. I opened this one. I haven't incorporated the cards yet. So kind of funny, I've got all this stuff. But they had a big holiday sale a few years ago. And these were like $1 a piece. They were just, I think, trying to get rid of old stock. I also bought a lot of Warhammer Fantasy RPG. Got most of the books and box sets for that too in the same year. And everything for Battle Lore. I didn't have any Battle Lore. I got the base game and all the little units and stuff they released. So it was a good Christmas that year. So I have been playing like card games since about, I think, 94. Shortly after Magic came out, I was a couple sets into that, or a couple sets had been released. So I played a lot of Magic, and through the years, you know, Spellfire, World of Warcraft card game, of course, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, Vanguard. There was just a bunch of card games that I've played. Then around 2000 or so, I found Runebound, 2nd edition. I was like, oh man, you can have these cool adventures on tabletop with miniatures and everything across a world map. So I got Runebound, and that's what got me hooked on tabletop gaming then. You know, get rid of Monopoly and Life and all that. I was into these Fantasy Flight and Asmodee and all these other cool companies. So some of my other games that I have, obviously I've got Warhammer Invasion, I've got the 40K Conquest, and a few years ago when Age of Sigmar came out, like Silver Tower, they had a few, they'd release a big box set with tons of miniatures. I kept up with the first 2 or 3 of those, but it's just too expensive. I couldn't keep up with that. And I bought the 40K when the new edition came out. I bought the first Dark Imperium or something like that. So I got that. Also in the Warhammer universe, I've got a few other games, but I've got one called Relic, and I've got an expansion for that. But that is a lot like Talisman. So back in the fantasy, going back to Fantasy Flight games. So there's Talisman, and I've got Cataclysm, a couple expansions for that. And then Prophecy, that's another of these world exploration games. It's a lot like Talisman. And then, like I said, I've got Runebound 2nd edition, quite a few expansions for that. They had big box expansions like this, and a bunch of small packs. And I recently got Runebound 3rd edition. I'm working on that collection now. I've got the World of Warcraft board game. That's pretty good, pretty authentic to the video game, if you're into that. And I backed the Seventh Continent Kickstarter. So I've got the core game on that. I'm waiting for Wave 2 to ship, which has all the expansions. And that's supposed to be out sometime this year. It's supposed to be out like a year ago, but I've got other things to keep me busy, so I'm just waiting for that to come in. Let's see. Fantasy Flight also came out with Discover Lands Unknown at the end of last year. And that's one of their unique games, whenever every box is different. So I've got one box of that. That was pretty fun. Let's see, Quest for El Dorado. That's kind of in that same vein, but it's more of a race game. But then got a lot of dungeon delving games. Of course, Gloomhaven, had to do that one. That was a Kickstarter that I backed. Let's see, then there's Dungeon Quest. I believe that's discontinued. That was a Fantasy Flight, but pretty brutal game. And I've got few versions of Dungeon. That goes back to TSR in the early Dungeons & Dragons days. And I've got 3 or 4 versions of that game. Then I've got Descent 2nd edition, which is a tabletop with miniatures. What made that cool is when they came out with an app a couple years ago, that lets you play it solo. It basically controls the enemies, so you don't have to have one player being the bad guys and one or more players being the good guys. So that's Descent. I also have Mansions of Madness. That's along the same lines. Arcadia Quest, another little miniatures game. Oh, then I backed Mechs vs. Minions. I think that's what it was called. From the makers of League of Legends. So that's a pretty fun one. Let's see. Pathfinder Adventure card game. Got a lot of card games. So Paizo has released 4 of those core sets. I've got all 4 and all their expansions. I had to drop out on all the little class decks. There was way too many for me to collect. Too many decks made for that. Then going back to the living card game, I've got Lord of the Rings, I've got some Game of Thrones, and then the Dark Eye universe, they came out with Aventuria, which is a cool little card game. You can either duel, 2 players can duel, or there's scenarios where you can adventure. Deck building games, I've got Ascension, Dominion, I just got Aeon's End, that's a fun one. I've got Thunderstone, 7 Wonders. Let's see, Dragonfire, that's Dungeons and Dragons. I've got a lot of Dungeons and Dragons stuff. That's what started me back in 5th, 6th grade with role-playing games. So D&D has their adventure system. They've had several releases in that. I have the Ravenloft, the Castle Ravenloft, Temple of Elemental Evil, and Tomb of Annihilation. There are a couple others that I need to pick up. There's Assault of the Giants. That was another one. It's not the adventure system, but it's along those lines. Let's see, D&D also has a couple of Dice Masters sets, and I've got the first one, most of those. And then Betrayal at Baldur's Gate. So, I mean, I've just got tons of stuff, and I'd love to do videos on all of it. I just don't have the time to make all these videos that I want to make. Plus, there are better videos out there. There are professionals. This is what they do. They know the rules better, and they're more entertaining. So that's why those first two parts of Warhammer Invasion here, that was just kind of for me, just to see what I could do with with a game. But I don't know. I like how it turned out, and I think it has so many hits because there's not much out there on Warhammer Invasion. You go to YouTube, and there aren't many videos out there. So maybe that's a key. You know, rather than try to do all the popular games that have been done and redone and overdone, either try to find a spin on that, or just to do, like I said, these lesser known games. I've got quite a few of those too. So maybe I'll go that direction. But anyway, so this was a Moon Gamer TT channel update and a conclusion to the 3-part Warhammer Invasion series. It didn't wrap up like most people probably would prefer, but that's it. It's what it is. So anyway, I've enjoyed making these, so I hope to make some more in the near future, and we'll just have to see. Thanks for watching, and thanks for the few people who have subscribed. Sorry there hasn't been much, well, I'll say any content lately, well, in a year and a half. But we'll see. Maybe changes are on the horizon. All right. We'll talk to you later. Bye.